Let's take a look at sentence final rising intonation. And this is a lot more than just yes or no questions, so it might not be as simple as you think, but the same basic system is always working. The first most obvious place to start when we're talking about sentence final rising intonation is, of course, yes or no questions. Now, we've talked quite a bit already about yes or no questions indirectly, but there's a couple extra details you need to know about yes or no questions themselves. The first is, how do you rise? So we saw when we're talking about falling intonation, like falling at the end, it's a full fall, right? Often falls off the cliff. But then we saw how in a list, for example, if it's not at the end of the sentence, that we'll do a partial fall to close the list and then continue what we're saying. So not all falls are created equal. Same thing with rises. Now, a lot of the different variations of falling and rising will actually have more to do with emotional intonation. And again, we're going to see that later in this masterclass series. But when it comes to rising intonation, just like there's a full fall and a partial fall, there's a full rise and a partial rise. What we've seen so far, that's more of a partial rise. It's a slight rise by default. Now, in a yes or no question, there's two basic ways that you can rise. One is with the exact same rise that we've seen before. Do you like dogs? Do you like dogs? Right? Dogs, cats, birds. Do you like dogs? So it doesn't have to be this sort of questioning tone. It could just be a slight little rise, and there's various different ways that we can inflect or change the exact way we're using our voice to give little subtle differences. But that's the basic idea. Just a slight little rise there. It's enough for a yes or no question. You know from the context and usually from the grammar that it's a yes or no question. The actual question tone, as it's often called, is usually a bit steeper, and it's what I like to call the question curl, because it's not actually a straight rise, it's more of a sloping rise. We tend to start really low and we'll sort of curve it up, might even sort of feel like it's kind of curving in on itself a little bit, and that actually matches more or less the question mark symbol. So instead of saying, do you like dogs? I can say, do you like dogs? Dogs? And there may be slightly different reasons or purposes for using one or the other, but the biggest difference between how they sound, if you're doing the slight rise on the question or the question tone on the question, this question tone is one way that we add a feeling of uncertainty. Do you like dogs? Dogs? Do you like dogs? It sounds a bit more uncertain. It sounds a bit more question-y, we might say. So this is actually something of more an emotional effect that we're attaching to that basic rise idea, but it's specifically used for uncertainty and questioning. There's one more important thing about yes or no questions that we need to cover really quick, and that is earlier in the falling intonation lessons, we talked about how if we move the focus word, which again is attentional intonation, we're going to explore that more later, but if we move the focus word to where it's not the last content word, that we would fall from that point, right? It just continues to fall until we reach the end. A yes or no question is the opposite, except it doesn't necessarily continuously rise. Let's say, for example, instead of saying, do you like dogs? Do you like dogs? What if I say, do you like dogs? Now I'm specifically pointing out you compared to somebody else. Do you like dogs? Notice I'm not saying, do you like dogs? Do you like dogs? No, I'm saying, do you like dogs? So if you move the focus word, when you go up on that focus word, if it's a yes or no question, you're going to stay up, maybe rise a little bit more at the end, but you don't want to fall back down and then go up again. Although there is a special case for doing that. It's more for emphasis, a special kind of extra emphasis. We're not going to worry about that right now. The second use of rising intonation that is sentence final is very simple. It's tag questions that are actual real questions. Okay, that's pretty simple. Just grammatically, I provide a statement and then I tag it with a question. I'm providing information. and then questioning that myself. You're a student, aren't you? Right? So I'm packaging that information as a question, and I want you to confirm it. So that makes sense. That should be very simple, very basic. It's basically a yes or no question. Just the structure is a little special. The next case where you would use rising intonation at the end of a sentence would be exclamation questions. And we talked a bit about that before, how the exclamation, right, it needs to be higher. If you want to sound complete, it's more of a statement. It needs to fall a little at the end. If it's a question, maybe you're really surprised and you're like, really? Or is that true? We still need that little bit of explosion emotionally. So it comes up, that's the exclamation part. But then we don't want it to come down. We want it to actually sound like a question. So it's like an even higher question. It's a sharper question. Really? Really? For comparison, really? Really? It's true. Is that true? There's a very special case, which is combining rises. Now here we kind of covered a lot of this talking about or last time, but there's a little bit more to this, and I want to give you a different context to show more deeply how this works. If I say, does he like cats or dogs? It sounds more open, like, well, these are just two options. There could be other options. Now, if I say, do you want to meet on Monday or Tuesday? So what I'm telling you is that those are the two options. Now, you could say, well, neither, I need to find a different day. But depending on the context, like in a context like this, it can feel sort of like I'm forcing those two options onto you, right? Because I'm saying, well, Monday or Tuesday, pick one. That's all you got. So instead of that, what if I rise on both? Do you want to meet on Monday or Tuesday? Now it feels more open, like these are suggestions, right? And there's a little bit of an emotional intonation effect here because I'm keeping it lighter, right? We're talking about structural intonation, but it's not always possible to separate out that emotional element depending on the context. When we fall at the end and we close those options, it makes it feel firm. It makes it feel like these are the two options. But based on the context, that can feel a little rude because I'm saying you have to do one of these. If I keep it lighter emotionally and I sort of rise, right? We're not changing the exact tone or anything, but that's the effect in this context. It just makes it feel like I'm not trying to push down on you. I'm not trying to impose on you, as we would say, by limiting your options. I'm saying, hey, could be Monday, could be Tuesday, could be some other day. What works for you? So it can sound a little bit more polite as well, and that's another thing we'll be covering later in the series. More cases of passing back. Now, the first interesting piece here, which you might already know, is that in addition to rising at the end of a yes or no question, we can also turn any regular statement into a yes or no question by rising at the end. He wants to go to the beach. Okay, it's a statement. I'm going to change it to he instead of I, because if I question myself, it gets a little weird. Does he want to go to the beach? We rise, regular question. Does he want to go to the beach? Okay. Now, what if I say he wants to go to the beach? He wants to go to the beach. So I changed the statement into a yes or no question. Essentially, it basically functions like a yes or no question, but you can't use this to just replace your regular yes or no questions. There's a specific use for it, unfortunately, right? Because things would be easier that way. Now, the way that this works, the reason why it works and how to actually use it is, number one, you're taking the information as a statement, and then that's the ball, right? The statement is in the ball, and then you're throwing that statement up for confirmation. Okay, so you're not sure. It's kind of like a question tag where it's an actual question, but I'm pretty sure that this only works in response to previous information. Okay, this is the key to using it. It has to be in response to previous information. So like I said, if the previous information is, I know he doesn't like the beach. And let's say Tom, okay, I know Tom doesn't like the beach. And you come to me and you say, you want to go to the beach? And I say, sure. Who's coming? And you say, Tom said he wants to go. And I said, he wants to go to the beach? in that context, in that case, that sort of conversation there, I wouldn't say, does he want to go to the beach? Because you just told me he wants to go to the beach. I would take the statement that you made. Tom said he wants to go. I don't have to use those exact words in that exact order, but that's the information. Tom said he wants to go to the beach. So I take that information, that statement that you made, and I put a rise on it to question that information that you just gave me. So that's what I mean when I say I'm taking that statement, I'm taking that information, take it, I put it into a ball, and I pass it back to you. Like, what? Are you sure? Confirm? It has the same pass back effect. Like if I ask you a question you didn't hear, and then you know, when you repeat the question, you use the following intonation. We talked about that earlier. But when I pass it back to you and I say, sorry, say that again, right? I toss the ball back to you. We're doing basically the same thing. I'm taking the information you gave me and I'm passing it back to you because I want you to confirm. I want you to repeat. And so I say, he wants to go to the beach. And then you might say, yeah, I know he hates the beach, but he said he wants to go. So you should see the context there where that works, and it's very natural. Now, another example, when I say, oh yeah, he's tall. You say, wait, he's tall? You might even add like, oh, I thought you said he's short. So now we get a bit of a contrast, right? Oh, he's tall. I thought you said he was short. Okay, so again, that or is sort of implied in the background with that contrast, but you don't have to add that extra information. If you just say, wait, he's tall? I think he's short. But you say he's tall. So I question the information and I pass it back to you. He's tall? Isn't it just amazing how the system works? WH questions, yes. When can we rise on a WH question? Okay, we know that we fall because a WH question, as I said, it is a statement with missing information. So it's in the form of a question, but it's really a statement with missing information. If I fall on a WH question, that's just normal. Who wants to go to the beach? Fall. Okay, I'm just looking for that missing piece of information that would complete the statement. If I rise, this is a form again of passing back. So let's say, for example, you make the statement, you tell me, we're leaving at 3 a.m., 3 in the morning. It's really early, but that's the statement, so you fall at the end. Okay. Now, let's say that I am surprised by that, right? And I want you to confirm, right? So I say, when are we leaving? When are we leaving? So it's not, when are we leaving? Now notice there's a different purpose here. Same question, different purpose based on the intonation. If I ask you, when are we leaving? So this is before, you never told me anything about when we're leaving. I'm asking you, I want to know, I want to complete the statement, fill in that missing information of the time. I say, when are we leaving? You say, we're leaving at 3 a.m. Okay, that also falls. Great, so now I have that information. So now I say, when are we leaving? Okay, now it doesn't have to be where I ask the WH question and then you answer and then I ask the WH question with a rising tone. That's one progression of the conversation of how that could go. But you should see how there's a different purpose here. When I'm actually trying to fill in that missing information, because I don't have the information from you, I fall at the end because I'm trying to complete the statement. But if you give me the information, then I can use that just like I can turn a regular statement into a question, pass it back to you for confirmation, maybe because I'm surprised. We can do the same thing with the WH question. It works exactly the same, except now it's in the form of a WH question. So you say, we're leaving at 3 a.m. I say, we're leaving at 3 a.m. When are we leaving? It means exactly the same thing, just with a different structure. And I'm passing that back to you for confirmation. Now note that on this example, I used a lot of really strong rising with a certain inflection, like, when are we leaving? When are we leaving? And this is more than just a regular question rise. There's a little bit of surprise here, a little bit of emotion. I would actually probably put an exclamation on it because I'm surprised. If you don't use that type of really full question sounding tone and you just do sort of a little rise on it, like we talked about earlier that you can do with a regular yes or no question, and you say, when are we leaving? When are we leaving? So now there's not that element of surprise. This would be used in a case where we established the time that we're going to leave, but I don't remember. So I wouldn't be surprised, because this isn't a case where like you just told me and then I'm responding like, wait, what? I'm not passing it back to you in that way. I already knew the time, but I forgot, or maybe I'm not sure anymore and I want to double check. And so to confirm, to check with you, I say, wait, when are we leaving? It's very common to add again at the end of that, just as a little extra reinforcement that, hey, I need you to remind me. So when are we leaving again? When are we leaving again? So by not shooting up so high like that, we remove that element of surprise, and it just sounds like a simple, hey, remind me because I don't remember the information, or I want to double check just to be sure. In either case, there's still this pass back based on previous information. In the case of the surprise, you just now gave me the information and I immediately react to it by passing it back. But in the second case, where there's no surprise, I'm still passing it back to that previous information that was already established before, but I forgot or want to double check, and I pass it back in reference to the previously established information in the form of a rising question. I know this one might seem a little bit abstract, but all the same pieces are there.